who remember when a less than an ounce of marijuana was a felony, and honestly, it's a generational thing. So as we keep taking a bite of the apple, I think we're eventually going to get to a solution. I don't know if it'll be a solution in my career, but we're getting towards a solution. And I honestly will, I'm going to be a little bit more blunt. I do have a position on 19. At this point, I'm leaning towards opposing it for several reasons, which I'll get into. But I still appreciate the opportunity to come here and talk to a whole bunch of people who are endorsing it. So I wouldn't win an election in this room, okay? You never know, thank you.
You're not gay, are you?
I'm representing the boots on the ground. And the boots on the ground are the people that enforce the laws. And when citizens come and say, why are you doing this? They don't go to the state assemblyman saying, why did you pass this or why didn't you pass it? It's the law enforcement on the boots on the ground who are there, either serving the search warrant, returning marijuana to the patient, doing everything we can to protect the rights of the medical marijuana, the compassionate use group. However, we're the ones who know the problems of Prop 215. And I truly wish, honestly, that when the authors of Prop 19 were getting this together, they would have called and said, can you tell us where the biggest problems are of 215? And I would have gladly told you where the biggest problems are. Some of the things that aren't even talked about in the legislative body in Sacramento or in larger cities that are automatically putting their stamp of denial on medical marijuana are very simple things. We have situations where we have little old ladies who can't use their backyard because the 20-year-old next door with a sore shoulder is growing 25 plants. And when we go out there and we find out he is in compliance and she can't trim her roses because of the stench, it's very hard to tell the little 85-year-old lady, I'm very sorry, but we have Prop 215, but we don't have Proposition Fresh Air. And it's something that we have to face every day. In September and October in Mendocino County, every day we get more complaints about stench than any other single complaint. And I know some people are going to say it doesn't stink, but we all have rights. And what law enforcement does is we want to go out and respect the people's rights. So we're not out there saying you have to cut down your marijuana because of stench. We're trying to be the peacekeeper and trying to mediate a neighborhood problem. And so this is one of the biggest problems that we're going to face, I assure you. I'm glad that Prop 19 faces or puts some emphasis of the transportation, but transportation is a huge problem. Now think of this, if one county authority allows for more than the minimum and another county next door doesn't, and the person is transiting through that county and gets stopped by law enforcement. It's going to be a situation where someone says, but I thought it was legal, and we hear that every day when we serve search warrants. But I thought it was legal in Mendocino County. And the impression that we have, because of MSNBC's Marijuana East or whatever you want to say, is that people truly believe it's a land of milk and honey, and they can do almost they want. And one of our premier defense attorneys is in the audience, and I'm sure that he's had many clients who said, but I thought it was legal. I had no idea the cops were going to come here because I thought it was legal to do. And so the education process is something that we take very serious. We take it so serious that last year in Mendocino County, we took out a half-page ad in every newspaper when I paid for it with drug asset seizure money that explained what the laws were in Mendocino County. Because there's three groups that I tried to explain what the laws are. The people who are pro-medical marijuana, the people who are anti-marijuana, and the cops. And it's tough to try to get all three of those people on this three groups on the same page. But that's what my job is. I'm going to really go on to a part that you're going to not remember my name, but you'll remember, well, what a jerk. He's talking about all the violence associated with marijuana, but that's where I'm going to go right now. I'm not going to take a quantum leap by any step by saying that marijuana very often leads to money, money very often leads to greed, and greed very often leads to violence. There's no quantum step on any of those four steps I just took. But last year in Mendocino County alone, we had 11 reported home invasions in a county that only has 91,000 people. We have 22 hydroponic stores. We have people who are coming to Mendocino County for one day just to do home invasions. We have a person that's looking at 94 years right now in our county jail. And I'm not saying this to be funny at all. I'm saying this very serious. he and his group tied up a man and threatened to burn his testicles with a blowtorch unless he opened up a safe. That's how serious we're talking. We're talking about crime that's absolutely associated with marijuana and money. And one of my jobs is try to figure out if Prop 19 passes, or if it fails, whatever's going to happen, how are we going to work with it to take the criminal element out? How can we get it off the front page? Because as long as it's on the front page, it stirs emotion. And as long as it stirs emotion, we have people who are either going to be against it or for it, and it's just like having a protest out there without signs every time we have a court decision. So you know, there's a Chinese curse, may you live in interesting times, and we're surely there. I know my time's almost out, and I want to let you know that as a law enforcement officer, I'm not going to sit here and say there is not a benefit to medical marijuana, because I truly believe there is a benefit to medical marijuana. My analogy is, and I'm a cop, I'm not very bright, I'm a simple kind of guy. My analogy is a freeway. And on Highway 101 right now, as we speak, God forbid, the majority of people out there are speeding. I know that. And law enforcement, if we catch them, we give them a ticket, they get their day in court, and they pay their fine. We're not closing down Highway 101 because the majority of people are speeding. We're saying there are some people who are obeying the law, they're keeping the streets safe, and there's a reason for the highways. I want that same analogy to work with medical marijuana. I'm not talking about recreational marijuana, I'm talking about medical marijuana. There is a small group of people who are absolutely legitimate medical marijuana patients. The people that we saw on the posters and the commercials in 1996 when we were considering passing this initiative. And they are the people that I will continue to fight for and make sure they have their rights. But please understand, there are people out there who are absolutely trying to take advantage of the good-natured people who are going to pass another decriminalization law. And our job as law enforcement is to really and truly look at this and say, are you really legitimate, or are you just trying to take advantage of a situation? And that's where we are. Unfortunately, in the last 3 weeks, if you follow the newspaper, follow the news, there's been 3 shootings in marijuana gardens of growers that have had assault rifles or weapons. And it's putting law enforcement into a situation that we do not want to be in. And do I hope it's going to take the Prop 19, if it passes, it's going to take some of the criminality out? Of course I do. But I don't believe that it's going to take the greed out. And I'm close to 1 minute. In April in Mendocino County, a gentleman from Georgia was arrested who's been coming to Mendocino County for several years, every 3 weeks, buying 10 pounds of marijuana, and going back to Savannah, Georgia, buying it for $1,500 a pound, selling it for about $4,000 a pound. It was a great business plan. He hadn't planned to get arrested, but he did. And if Proposition 19 passes, I challenge you to ask yourself, is the price of Mendocino and Humboldt marijuana in Savannah, Georgia, really going to be affected? And I'm going to say it's not. And we're still going to have the people coming to Mendocino County that here are coming for one reason, and they're coming to create crime. So thank you for discussing this. Thank you for being here at almost 6 o'clock on Friday night. There's other places to be.
Your questions or comments. Go ahead, please.
Yes, hi. I'm not a lawyer. I'm just a citizen who's just come to hear this discussion. And I'm just wondering what would happen if nationwide all drugs were legalized and we could cut the profit from the cartels and the gangs, and it would... The question is, what would happen if all drugs were legalized? Right, and... Okay, because we have a little time, we have a lot of people... It has to just be Prop 19? No. Your question is what would happen if what would, I mean, and if it were regulated the way that alcohol is regulated across the country. Okay, I think we got the question. Okay. Good. Next question. We're going to take some questions and then we'll give our panelists an opportunity. Next question.
Much of the rhetoric so far, the Proposition 19 and many of the taxation aspects of it, comes under the premise of a highly inflated crop commodity that has been made that way much to date by law enforcement's activities. These activities are decreased by legalization, then the crop commodity, as pointed out by one or several of the speakers, will be deflated considerably. And additionally, it will not be deflated in other localities, as pointed out by the sheriff in Georgia. So for one of us to think in a moment that if this passes, that all of our borders aren't going to be checked, and we're going to have border enforcement agents on the outgoing side of California to regulate or to at least reduce that sort of an influence or incentive is going to be highly increased.
So the question essentially is, what happens in terms of interstate travel from Californians leaving the state with marijuana in their car?
Correct. What all of our bordering states, what are they going to do with it?
Very good. Good question. Next question.
Good evening. My question is, I was wondering, Tom Ammiano spoke and said that after this bill goes through, that they're going to tweak it in the Assembly. What happens if the Assembly doesn't want to tweak it? Or it goes awry, because lots of times when you have a bill and you get it in front of a body, I mean, it just gets eaten up by them.
Got it. What happens if it's not tweaked?
Sheriff Allman, thanks for being here.
saying we're a bunch of tweakers?
No, I'm not. You say you're not tweakers.
So I have just a question for Sheriff Allman. Several weeks back, the newspapers reported that a woman who was authorized by your department to grow marijuana in Mendocino County was raided by DEA, and widely reported were DEA comments to the press that said, basically, we don't care what your sheriff told you, that doesn't matter to us. And I'm just wondering if you could comment on that.
Next question.
And also to Sheriff Allman, thanks for coming, and my best to your brother. You said that there were 11 home invasion robberies in a year in a county of 91,000 people. If you'd have said 111, I'd have sat up bolt upright. But in this city, we have exactly the amount of murders in a year per capita as you do. We have about 9 times as many people, and I would say we have about 100 murders in a year. Forgive me.